and I work in the steel fabricating space. And in this show, I reach out to industry insiders and try and get a handle on how people are navigating this rapidly changing landscape. I think we're all struggling with this new reality and the stress that's imposing on our businesses, on our family, and even our emotional stability. So I'm hoping to connect with others just like you dealing with these very same issues and find out how they are responding, what procedures they have implemented, and where they see this going. And hopefully, in this process, we'll reveal some creative steps that others are taking to either minimize the disruptions or possibly even pivot and use creative ideas and solutions to capitalize on opportunities that might arise in these unusual times. I'm going to be reaching out to fabricators across the entire United States and from many other countries around the world. And I'll be speaking with manufacturers, vendors, and service industry suppliers in the upcoming weeks. So please stay tuned and make sure you subscribe to our channel. And I'm hoping that we'll all find value in these discussions. So without further delay, I'd like to welcome my next guest, Chad Hoke, who is the Vice President of Big Four Steel Services in Houston, Texas. Welcome, Chad.
Glad to be here.
So, Chad, my understanding, if I remember correctly, you're about half an hour north of Houston, sort of somewhere wedged between the I-45 and the I-69. Is that right?
We are really close to I-45, but we are exactly 30 miles north of Houston. We're in Spring, Texas.
Okay. Um, well, all I remember about Houston is insane traffic. Um, what's going on there on the freeways these days?
That's actually the only caveat there is to the crisis is the traffic is non-existent.
So the problem is you have no traffic, and the good thing is you have no traffic. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. Yes, sir. That's a good and a bad all at the same time.
Yep. When you say no traffic, I mean, are you talking about significant reductions or just completely zero traffic going to work?
Significant reduction. I mean, there's no pileups. We have pileups on every major freeway in this town, and I think the radio stations are actually excited to, basically advertise there's a pileup on I-10 East or something, which they're usually multiple on each one every day.
Yeah, well, I can imagine right now it's pretty open. The reason I wanted to get you on the show, Chad, is because unfortunately, from where I sit, my guess is that you're going through a double whammy. First, we're dealing with the coronavirus, but second of all, Texas, as we all know, is lives or dies by the oil industry, by the price in the oil. So oil is not doing too well right now, as we've all seen. So let's get to the oil crisis first. We'll get to coronavirus later. Has the recent reduction in oil price had any impact on your business?
Not at the moment. We're building a tremendous amount of warehouse projects in the Houston area, and it does impact us all in certain ways. But right now, the huge warehouses, I guess, Amazon's, the big shipping industry companies who need warehouse space. We do rely on oil, but not solely anymore in Houston.
Okay. Are you aware of fabricators that specialize in that space that are affected by it?
Oh, absolutely, yes, sir. There's actually just this weekend there's a little machine shop, oil related industry that is always working Saturday, Sunday, any day of the week. You go by there and the gates are shut, and it looks like they're not producing anything right
Yeah, I'm really sorry to hear about that. But yeah, one would anticipate with this major reduction. I think we're hoping that by the end of this week that our president is having some conversations with Saudi and Russia regarding some restrictions and if not, maybe imposing some sanctions, and hopefully there'll be some stability in the oil industry. I believe that there's a lot of the shale producers that just cannot even begin to survive at these kind of prices.
now. Absolutely, it benefits us for the oil industry to be going strong. I mean, it's kind of funny. Somebody mentioned a few years ago that we could, it's just funny how we can afford $4 a gallon gas, but we can't afford $2 gallon gas.
Yeah, it's very strange. In most environments, if you were price fixing, you'd be hung up and quartered. But somehow in the oil industry, we want them to fix the prices so at least we can keep our business here in the States going. So yeah, quite a dichotomy. Um,
Yeah.
in terms of Big Four fabrication, what is the type of work that you guys go after? Big Four sort of services, sorry, steel services. What is the type of work that you guys chase?
Really, to be honest with you, what put us on the map, the business started in 1980, was the tilt wall warehouses, tilt wall jobs, basically. Doesn't matter if it's a warehouse, but right now that's our target. Easy in, easy out, quick work. We're steel erectors and steel fabricators, so it, it benefits both companies.
But aren't the margins in that business pretty tight? I mean, you've got to have a lot of competitors chasing down that work. Like you say, if it's easy in, easy out, the margins can't be there.
Technically, you are correct. We just hopefully to build up a volume.
Okay. All right. So, but you're not the total GC on the site. You perform as a subcontractor, just handling the structural steel component. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. We're totally steel fabricator, steel erector, all in one bundle.
Now, when you and I chatted about 10 days ago, I think we've chatted three times now, but 10 days ago, you said you no change to Houston. Then I chatted 2 days thereafter, and then you suddenly said, oh no, it's all gloom and doom. And then we chatted, I think, 2 days ago, and you've just landed a couple more jobs. So, what's come in your door in the recent days?
Oh, this is very confusing. 2 weeks ago we were loaded, and a few days after, with all the stay at home, we had three jobs technically postponed. One threatened to cancel, and it was our field was suffering. We had a little bit of a layoff just because of work reduction instantly,
Yeah,
and it wasn't a lot, but it was. You hate to lay off anybody, but
sure.
they're actually trying to hire them back, and my wife, she could tell that something was wrong when I showed up at home, and she's like, well, just we'll figure it out. We'll get through it. And I was like, well, I'm worried about the company, obviously, but not myself primarily.
Sure.
Everybody tied
Yeah.
into it. And just this last week, a light switch went off again, and now just huge jobs are, we're blowing and going, meeting and greeting, and hopefully sell a lot more.
And once again, these are more warehousing work. That's what you've pulled in again.
Yes, sir.
When you're bidding on this, I'm sure you have sort of some idea of who the end user is. What are the typical end users for like let's say the jobs that have just recently landed? And the reason I'm asking is I'm always curious about who these courageous people are that are still moving forward in these times when everybody else is getting nervous, and these customers are
You
pushing
know,
forward.
that's a good question. Most of the warehouse projects we're doing just have the name of the business park. It doesn't actually have maybe a tenant on board, or maybe the tenant's not ready to advertise who it's for.
So in this
So,
case, this is still a developer that is moving forward with a business park.
absolutely, yes, sir.
Oh, that's to me that's a courageous move because one would anticipate that if you do have some slowdown, stoppages, or even periods of people not affording to be able to pay rent, you would expect that there would be a surplus of square footage available in the industry and the warehousing and retail space and office space. So the desire to add new square footage to the market seems to be kind of counterintuitive, but obviously they know a lot more than I do. That's why they're developers and they make all the good money.
I think you're right, and actually, it's really opposite of what I would normally think is the larger warehouses are more, I guess, appealing than and I say larger, anything, 500 or 600,000 square foot and up. Actually, more so than the 150,000 square foot warehouses.
Yeah, I think we've seen that on a national level. the move to these massive distribution centers. It's on a level that we just could never have imagined before. I have a lot of customers that are in this industry putting up big square footage for all kinds of distribution, I think this is part of the change in how we as a nation are doing our shopping. Uh, we no longer necessarily want to go to the mall. We want to have it delivered, and for that to happen, you've got to have distribution close to the end user, whether it's medical goods that have to be sent out to hospitals, or whether it's you know buying personal items from Amazon or something similar online.
Yes, absolutely. The shopping or whatever, I would much rather order my wife a gift online than go to the mall to fight somebody to get something wrong.
You and me both. I'm not a great fan of shopping myself. I don't consider myself a shopper. I consider myself a buyer. I know exactly what I
Exactly.
want. I go and do my research, send it, and that's it. It's convenience. And yeah, I can see this trend with warehousing continuing into the future as our shopping habits are changing. Um, you mentioned that you've had some work that was put on hold, or have you had anything that's been canceled?
Three projects were put on hold. One is still threatening to cancel, but they're working out scenarios of what if we wait a couple of months or 3 months, and what are the ramifications. And two of them are postponed, saying they're definitely going to do them, but they're going to basically feel the market. So I don't know how long that postponement's going to last.
You also mentioned something about you were concerned when you were kind of a little bit light there, had to make a small cutback on your job site crew. If I remember correctly, you're somewhere around about 70 to 80 people in the erection side. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Are there any restrictions on job sites at the moment, or any things that you have to mandate differently on how you used to work? What's happening on the job site itself?
That's a good question. There's a lot of, obviously we have to do water bottles, personal water, basically the case of water instead of the water can, everybody touching the same button to get a drink of water.
Right.
It's still on the honor system on the, do you feel good? They haven't, that I know of, had them do a, thermometer or temperature test to see what temperature you are that morning. So it's still on the honor system in that aspect. 6 feet,
Yeah.
all that good stuff.
Yeah, but in steel fab, you still have people fairly close to each other at times. You need help and assistance. So obviously this has to be of concern. Have you as a company chatted to your staff about how they behave after hours, what they do in their own personal lives, avoiding going to events or meetings or big church gatherings or that sort of stuff?
Absolutely, yes, sir. We have production meetings and safety meetings every Friday, and I tell for sure, our shop guys that you dictate how you can handle this situation. We have the work, and obviously you have to keep yourself healthy and make wise choices because we literally had a guy who had a little bit of a scare. That's the only one that we thought may have the uh, the COVID-19, and he turned out to be negative, but he had to stay home for a week and work from home until they got his results.
Yeah, that must be quite frightening. I'm sure that all of us are a little bit, um, what's the word where we all wake up with a headache in the morning and we're all a little bit hypochondriac. I think that's the term. You know, I have to admit that I've put the thermometer under my tongue twice just because of the stress levels and the headaches that I wake up with at 3 a.m. or 4 a.m. and just got to make sure that I'm all good.
Absolutely, yes. I have apparently a bad habit of coughing, and I'm really trying to suppress that. I don't want to draw attention to myself.
I think you might get decked or arrested if you cough too loudly
Oh,
in public these days. Yeah. Yeah, I'm
yeah,
sure all of our habits are changing. Yeah. Are you? We'll come back to the personal stuff a little bit later on. Let's go through the work reality. In terms of your job sites, your fabricating, the fab shop, are you under a state restriction, a state mandate, or is this being rolled out on a regional, by the county, by the city? How are things sort of working in Houston at the moment?
Right now, we're on the edge of Harris County, so obviously we follow Harris County rules, and it's a stay at home unless you're obviously an essential business. And thank goodness we're still considered essential. And our guys have a form from our company stating who they work for and contact information, letterhead, and all that, just to allow them, if they do get pulled over during working hours, that they are going to a place, of employment
And of essential employment, correct? Yeah, yeah.
and of essential employment. Yes, sir.
Because I think that we're seeing that people are pretty, like you said, on a system and in everything. Yes, the traffic is down, which means that most people are staying at home, which we're very thankful for. And then for those of us that have to either service an essential industry, yes, we got to be there and take care of that. Um, if, if for instance, you get a mandate from your county that you have to minimize the number of people on a job site or restrict the number of people on a in your shop. We'll come back to the shop separately, but let's just talk about the job site. If you have to restrict the number of people on a job site, that could obviously extend the duration of that erection project. Obviously, if you have equipment on site, there's additional costs associated with that rental or whatever. Are you in a position, or fabricators in a position where you can pass on those costs to the end user, or those things that you just have to absorb yourself?
That's a really good question. We haven't had to deal with that yet, but we do have a few of our GCs have sent us letters stating, if we do get into that situation, we just have to obviously take our stuff off rent, whether it's lifts, forklifts, welding machines, you name it, and they will pay us for it if we're mandated to shut the job site down.
Oh, that's interesting. So that is coming from the general contractor itself. Yeah.
Yes, sir. But like I said, we haven't had to use that. I hope we don't. But if it comes down to that, then the it's certainly nobody's fault. But it's not our fault. It's a world epidemic, and I think the owners are gonna hopefully, you know, I guess ultimately pay us, and then maybe the government will reimburse them. I have no idea how this is all going to
Yeah.
play out.
I was going to have my accountant on our show this week to talk about all of these different stimulus packages and how we can apply for them, and there's so many different components, and he's just begged for additional time because everybody's still struggling to fully understand exactly what is available to all of us. I'm sure you've got people within your organization that are looking at this and examining every aspect of it.
That's a very valid point. Our comptroller, she's actually working right now doing paperwork for the government. We're affected, not wholly, but we're, just in case we do get that, we have our paperwork in line, and hopefully, still be standing once all this stuff clears out.
So if you're bidding on new work right now, let's call it these last two jobs that have come through, knowing what you know now, do you now build in additional contingencies for extension of project time and those sort of things, or do you just continue as you've done and hope that it all works out?
Well, to be honest with you, we're going to go with optimism that hopefully it all works out. And hopefully not to exercise the plan Z.
Yeah, that's the scary one, the one that's unknown. If you look around the world, we're starting to see some real glimmers of hope in terms of the tide is changing. We certainly see, we've seen, I'm sure we've all seen the images of people moving about in China now, not quite at normal levels, but we started to see people coming out. We started to see the death rate in Italy, which while still totally unacceptable and totally uh, it's desperate to look at. This is not numbers; these are people that are passing away and still passing away. But we can see that the actual hump has been crested, and I'm not so sure that this is not about that there's not as much infection, but it might be that people have more facilities available to them and are better able to deal with the actual sickness. So we're not nowhere near over the hump yet, and certainly for a country, America, we have, the worst of it is still ahead of us. But looking at these other places, we can see that this appears to be a relatively temporary. If we talk about a 6 months to 12 month period, is relatively temporary. I'm not sure that we all thought of that when we went into this, but that's kind of what it looks to us at the moment.
Absolutely, yes. You know, my optimism hopes that this Texas heat knocks it out and everybody goes back to business as usual.
Yeah, I sincerely hope you're right. We're in Florida as well, and I think we're the sixth most infected state right now. And I think just a couple of days ago, our state border was closed, so we're not letting people in or out. It's actually closed, and we're dealing with it. We're looking at an issue of not quite enough hospital beds, ICU capability, and certainly not enough ventilators to cope with what is the predicted outcome here. And we sincerely hope that we're able to get on top of that. But yeah, so please, we'll talk about all of that a little bit later. Let's come back to the fab shop. If I remember correctly, you're about 30 to 35 guys on the shop floor.
That's correct. About 35.
35, and you run a single shift.
Single shift. We generally work 10 hours a day. Of course, lately it's all, 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week, which is, when we do that, we're pretty slow. Our standard week is 4 10s and 8 on a Friday, and everybody rests, has a personal life on the weekend. Our machinery has a little bit of a break, and
Sure.
it works.
Okay. So at the moment, my understanding be is that you're still flat out. No change right now.
We are actually, if it wasn't Good Friday this week, we would have our overtime this week. But we're starting next week, going back to our normal operation as long as we can.
Wow. Well, it's
So
actually such a, go ahead.
our hours are going up.
Well, that's actually a lovely thing to hear, that we do hear so much gloom and doom and pessimism out there. So to hear that some fabricators are really doing well in this time, yeah, that's fantastic. And I sincerely hope that it continues. What steps have you put in place, or procedures have you put in place in the shop to mitigate contact or reduce the possible spread of coronavirus?
Well, we do have our production meetings on Friday, and we normally sit down in our break room, and we have 30, 35 guys just standing on top of each other. We've moved them out to the shop floor and get a louder speaker. And, we technically try to stay out of contact with each other. But, I don't know. It's just like you and I have touched on. You and I, you or I, or you and I could both have this stuff and just not really show the signs. So how much really can you prepare for this? I was touching doorknobs with, basically a napkin. And somebody said, "Well, are you changing napkins every time?" And I was, "No." They said, "Well, it supposedly, is it'll basically set on paper as it is will your hand." And so I'm like, "Well, I guess I'm defeating the purpose because I use the same napkin all day long and touch every door."
Yeah, well, I'm
So
glad I'm glad somebody in your operation had the foresight to educate you on this. But yeah, absolutely.
absolutely,
Yeah, this, I still see people touching gas pumps and door handles, and just it seems as either people are either in denial or just ignorant or just refuse to believe that it could happen to them. Um, we I'm originally from South Africa, and South Africa is of all places, really. I mean, if you think about it, of all places, the first country in the world to go to 100% lockdown. And they are they are taking an extreme situation. They are preventing anybody from literally leaving the house. There are some real implications because not everybody sits in a beautiful house. A lot of people are 6 or 8 or 10 in a shack, and living, hand to mouth. So this has massive implications for the people. So there are a lot of people that are struggling with it in a very different scenario than we are. Unfortunately, we have gloves and masks, and we can all take preventative measures. So please, I ask you to make sure that you're not using that napkin anymore.
absolutely, yeah, I learned that real quick.
Okay. So let's talk about the supply chain for steel in your fab shop. Your steel suppliers, are they still fully loaded with all profiles? Are you getting steel deliveries on time?
Absolutely, yes. I think we're blessed to be busy at the time. I don't know if our competition is as busy. It's really I don't really pay attention to that, but so far our steel is coming in as scheduled.
And what about consumables and supplies? Any delays or any restrictions on what you can get or get access to?
So far, nothing.
Okay.
We have zero. I mean, business as usual for us in a very unusual situation.
And so when you have all of these deliveries of product, either coming into your shop or leaving in your shop, loading of trucks and all that sort of stuff, how do you manage to mitigate, let's call it this potential threat of people that you don't work with, that you don't speak to on a daily basis, that you're not encouraging to behave safely at home, and you have no idea what they're doing in their personal lives? How do you mitigate contact with your staff in the shop?
That's another valid point of we try to maintain the 6 foot, what they're, and we're open air in the shop, and we're certainly not going to try to go up and shake anybody's hand. I'm a big touchy feely type person, so I'm having to basically in my own life having to watch what I say and certainly do, and it's a total lifestyle change for all of us down here.
Your steel detailing, is that something you do inside or do you use outside detailers?
Mainly outside. We have a couple of in-house guys, but they do our lighter stuff or maybe some overflow or an oversight on a detailer's part or small things. But mainly it's outsourced. But
Okay.
they're all around local, or certainly United States.
And they're, I guess they work from home for the most part.
Yes, sir. Some of them do, but I think they're able to still maintain their livelihood whether they're at home or in their office setting.
Sure, sure. And your staff in the office, I think you're about 10 people, if I remember correctly. Are you running a full complement at work, or are certain people working from home?
We have some that are working from home as much as they can. They may have to come in at odd hours to do maybe, basically some of their not data entry, but maybe doing their copies or basically running a set of drawings and then taking them back home to look, look
Okay.
at or study.
And all the work that you do, is it all done locally in the Houston or Texas area, or do you have to cross any state borders?
No, sir. We're all very blessed to have a lot of local work.
So no transportation issues at all.
So far, no, none.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So let me put you on the spot right now. How would you describe Big Four as a company? Are you guys conservatively managed? Do you look at the upside, the downside, and sort of adjust accordingly? Or are you guys big risk takers? Do you see an opportunity, pounce and go all? And I'm curious on the culture within the company.
We I would like to think we're just a bunch of great big thinkers here, but we kind of certainly take each situation as we get it. We like to learn from our mistakes, so I would say we're semi-conservative with a little bit of risk-taking possibility.
Thanks. And that's how I see you guys as well. So the reason for this question for that background is looking forward. How do you see this current situation playing out in 12 months or 2 years from now? Do you see this as just a temporary blip on the screen, or do you see it having some longer term repercussions?
I'm going to go with my optimistic side and say that I hope this is just something that we can all make jokes about in 2 months, or hopefully this is over in April, end of April, and this back to business as usual. But I have just no idea. Like that's just being optimistic. That's not based on any facts. I mean, I don't know if
Okay.
any of us have a fact of how this is going to play out.
Yeah, I look, we're all guessing at this moment. We'd love to believe that it's over quickly. Um, I was chatting with somebody who has a facility in China that supplies product to the auto industry, and the auto industry is down over 85% in the first quarter. Um, to me, those sort of things, that has a long snowball effect. Sure, you can wind up the auto industry quickly and get it going, but there's a lot of that has a significant impact on a country's economy or in manufacturing and just how we conduct our daily lives. My real concern for structural steel is, as we all know, we generally lag the economy by about 18 to 24 months. We have the fabrication thing dealing with developers pulling permits, choosing land, getting everything approved to get going, getting estimates and everything. There's a lag. It's about 18 to 24 months. So right now, the fabricating train is still at full tilt. We can feel the work coming through, and yes, sure, some people are slowed down. But if I chat to most of my fabricators, they're slammed. Maybe not quite as slammed as you are right now. We're doing extra hours, but most of my guys are busy. In fact, very few are struggling. But my concern is that if the economy, as we look at it right now, outside of fabrication, is slowing down now, at some point this train is slowed down and stopped, and then it takes a long time to start up. So are we looking at a stop train, or are we seeing fabrication just continuing as business as usual indefinitely?
I want to, like I said, my optimism is that this thing is going to continue to blossom. We may have some slow times. We all experience those, but that's why we don't work a bunch of shifts and all that. The last thing I want is to have employees who are of no fault of their own, just the workload slows completely down to where, we do some creative things when we do have slow time. It actually allows us to maintenance our machinery better than what we normally would if we were super busy. Maybe even sometimes patch the parking lot out in the concrete. I mean, we do some pretty amazing things to keep them here, but it's also based on the workload behind the slow time.
Sure.
So, we had a pretty rough go of it in '08 and '09, and I hope to never experience those type of work years again. We were able to survive, but we learned from that too. There will be a few things we would have to do different than what we did in those times. But I, uh, I really do hope that with the Houston economy, and they've opened up new tollways, new roads, and which is going to in turn open up more pasture land that's going to be suburbs, businesses, supermarkets. We do a little bit of everything, but right now we're blessed to have the warehouse projects. But we do schools, churches, whatever the work kind of leads us, especially with our GCs that we do a lot of work with. If they have a job and they want us to look at it, then we generally give it a try.
Well, I, I believe that there will be some impact, but I think it will be relatively short-lived. I do not think that we have anything as systemically induced as we had back in 2008. That was a lot of working out. That train really did come to a stop. I think this is what's unusual about this. This is the entire world stopping at the same time, and I don't think that's ever happened before. Normally, there's always a patch of the world that is going gangbusters. Even now, if gold price goes, all the way to $2,000, how do you mine it if you're under lockdown?
Absolutely, yes. And you brought up there's I'm sure that the car dealerships. I don't know anybody at the car dealerships that are experiencing just the no slow time. My wife has some friends that, well, a friend that her husband's, works for a car dealership, and he's at home. They're not moving enough. They're not moving anything. I mean, I have a friend that's in the mortgage business, home mortgages, and he said a lot of his stuff that was on go is still on go, but he has no idea how this is going to affect him,
Sure.
in the near future.
Yeah,
If we
and
don't have a job, if we have no work, no jobs, a bunch of people staying at home, they're certainly not going to look at, buying cars, buying new homes, going on these fancy vacations. Of course, right now you couldn't go anywhere anyway.
Yeah, I think the one industry that's going to really have a complete change is the travel industry. While we might come out of this really quickly, um, the overall not just American, but anybody's desire to get back on a plane, that's going to be an interesting thing. I spent my life, I do more than 100 flights every year, and I'm not so sure how keen I am to get back on a plane. I'm not really worried about the plane itself. I'm more worried about all the interaction, standing in line and TSA and all of those sort of scenarios. There's going to be some adaptation and a lot of confidence going to come back into the into our reality before that sort of stuff comes back. So if my heart goes out to anybody in the travel industry, and I've actually got two daughters that work in the travel industry, and I know how bad it is for them. But my understanding is that your wife is a dental hygienist and she's been laid off. Is that right?
Technically, the whole staff has the dentist, around here only, basically doing anything emergency. I guess if somebody has a real bad toothache or something, and well, hygienists, obviously their primary goal is to clean the teeth, and I guess that's not considered essential, and of course that puts them well in the parameters of the 6 feet, and all this kind of stuff, so in dealing with people's mouths, I mean, it's just not
No, not
it's
sensible at
not going
all.
to happen for a while. No.
Yeah. And your kids, I think you've got two college age kids. Are they back at home with you?
One of them is our son. He's 19. He's a freshman in college, and he's at home. They're doing online, trying to do the best they can. He's not a real big online fan, but at least he's able to maintain, his education. Uh, and he likes to fish in between, so he's enjoying the layoff. He has he gets to go quarantine himself in his boat on the lake somewhere. But our daughter's in law school and Baylor Law, and almost through with her second year. It's a 3-year stint, and it's they're doing online, but she's there. She claims, and she's right that it's less distracting in her apartment dealing with her. Everything's online there as well, so it's changed everything. Internships. A bunch of her friends are all in the same predicament, I guess, as we all are. But internships for the summer are very important for your second year to go work for a firm. Hopefully they like you and they offer you work. And I don't know how this is going to play out if the internships, some of them are canceling. Hers so far, knock on wood. it's she's still it's still on, but who knows how much longer this stay at home and confinement goes, if that's gonna be there when she's ready to get on board.
Yeah, my nephew's in the same position, studying mechanical engineering at Harvard, and he's moved in with us. And this would be the best time of his life. He's getting ready for graduation, and of course, all the businesses are recruiting, would normally be recruiting, and here he's about to graduate. A guy that speaks fluent Chinese, which has been really interesting as a mechanical engineer, ability to travel, very, very valuable for a company, yet nobody's coming to the university to recruit. And there he is sitting at our house going, I wonder what happens in a few months. Yeah, so this is an interesting time. Um, I'm going to wrap this up here, but before I do that, I look on that wall behind you. You mentioned something about pastures, but I see that looks very Texas-like behind you. Can you tilt your camera? Can you tilt your camera a bit so we can see what's on the wall behind you? Wow,
Right
that's
there's some bucks. We have a family uh, deer ranch.
yeah,
It's my dad's passion, and he is
interesting.
the king of Big Four. And I can keep showing, but those, like that one, right?
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
I'm
It
sitting.
takes some time to figure it out. Your opposite hand.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I have to move in a mirror, but those are the trophy bucks killed off the play. So that one in the middle, the bigger one, is actually the sheds from it. That's not actually the buck. That's a breeder buck. He's trying to trying to bring in genetics and we sell a little hunt, but really just enjoy the hunt. It's not really about the money. It's more of the passion.
Sure. And you're not so much a hunter, you're more of a fisherman yourself?
Oh, I love to fish. Yes, sir. Matter of fact, that's what I do this for, is so I can fish. And my son's actually a collegiate fisherman, and he came to y'all's neck of the woods. Well, actually, near.
You can fish at there's a sport called fishing at college?
Absolutely, yes,
No
sir.
way.
Absolutely. He came in second in the national championship in Florida just a couple of months ago, and came within an ounce of winning a boat. We were excited about that, and
Okay.
it was a big deal.
That's fascinating. I had no idea there was college fishing, and I love that line. Came within an ounce of winning a boat. That's pretty impressive. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they didn't have that when I was there. I can assure you that.
Well,
I'd still be there.
well, please tell your kids to stay at home. I'm sure we're all aware of the spring break kids that were partying down here in Fort Lauderdale that refused to get off the beach because they felt they were entitled to have their fun and party. And there's been quite a bit of, of notice shown where these kids, through tracking their apps on their phones, have seen the interaction they've had with people, and they literally have left a trail. So 40 of them were actually infected, but the trail of passed on infection has literally gone right across the United States. So behaving, let's call it irresponsibly, just because we're young and we're sort of feel we're immortal. Let's hope that we can drum it into their heads that staying at home is important.
Absolutely. Yes, sir. My daughter's quarantined herself up there for her studies, and I think, like I said, our son has quarantined himself at home, and he's not interacting with anybody. If he does leave the house, he's hooked onto his boat and going to. We live real close to a lake, so it's just 10 miles away, and he's not. They're not out there, partying at Fort Lauderdale. I can assure you that.
Well, Chad, thank you. I really appreciate you taking time out of your really busy day. I know when we chatted just before we went live, you you had to leave a production meeting dealing with these jobs that you're doing. So I really, giving 45 minutes out of your day for this vlog, we really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Please extend our sincere best wishes to your family. Please do the right stuff, stay away from everybody, stay healthy, and we wish you everything of the best in your personal life and in business life. And I cannot wait to get on a plane and come back and visit you in Texas.
Well, you're more than welcome, and it was certainly an honor, and you guys at Ocean Machinery, especially, well, everybody I know up there is considered family. So anytime y'all are around here, I would consider it a treat for you guys to come by.
Well, that's really kind of you. Thanks, Chad. And to those of our viewers that have joined us and emailed with your feedback and suggestions, it's really very much appreciated. We're trying to implement as much of your requests as possible. And as from this week, we're actually stepping up our production, and we're planned to do 2 shows per week, broadcasting live on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. As I mentioned earlier on the show, I'd hope to chat to our accountant this week to discuss the various components of the stimulus package, but we're going to delay this, and he'll be on with us shortly once he's got a little bit more of a handle on all the new things that have come out even more recently. So this Thursday, I'm actually going to be chatting with Steve Chasey. He's the president of Chasey Steel Fabricators and Erectors, and they're based in Hudson, New Hampshire. And as a fabricator in the Northeast, I'm sure you'll want to hear how they're faring, so stay tuned. And thanks to all of our viewers who joined in for our live video. Sorry I was not able to get to your questions. If you like the show, please give us a big thumbs up and make sure you hit the subscribe link down below. And we look forward to seeing you again. So till Thursday, look forward to it. And Chad, once again, we'll see everybody soon. Thanks, everybody. Goodbye.